Welcome to the middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson, along with our house DJ Tolliver. And Tolliver, no matter where you live or where you go in this country, you've probably had some exposure to President Trump's deportation efforts.
Yeah, a lot of my friends have been protesting for weeks, months in LA and Chicago, and like a lot of the spots I used to go are ghost towns now. So it's a lot to take in.
Interesting. You may have seen masked immigration and customs enforcement or ICE agents. You may have visited a restaurant with fewer workers or a Home Depot with fewer day laborers in the parking lot because they were afraid of being deported or being detained by mistake. That's happened. You may live in Wisconsin, where that judge was arrested for allegedly trying to help a man in her courtroom evade immigration authorities. Or maybe you live in Florida, home of Alligator Alcatraz, the detention center in the Everglades. Here is Governor Ron DeSantis explaining its purpose in an interview with Fox News in June.
This is going to be able to have more than 3,000 illegals can be processed through here. We've got a massive runway right behind us where any of the federal assets that they want to fly these people back to their home country, they can do it one-stop shop.
Well, it turns out that facility, which cost hundreds of millions of dollars, is now being emptied out after a judge said it had to be closed within 60 days. But there are apparently others like it on the way. The so-called Cornhusker Clink in Nebraska, the deportation depot near Jacksonville. No matter your personal connection to the more aggressive immigration tactics of the Trump administration, you probably have some thoughts about them. Our listeners always do. Are they needed in this moment, or are they a step too far? That is our question this hour. We're taking your calls at 844-4MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. But first, last week on the show, we talked about America's loneliness epidemic and what can be done to solve it. Here are some of the comments we got on our voicemail.
Hi, this is Ellie. I am from Shoreview, Minnesota, and I think loneliness in general is very common for the younger generations, especially with social media and the lack of accessibility to outdoor places that don't include athletics and things like that.
Hi, my name is Alicia Bean from Huntington Beach, California. I think that after the COVID-19 pandemic, a lot of in-person third spaces just don't exist anymore. Because of the internet and everyone going online, it seems really hard just to have the day-to-day chance interactions with people.
Hi, this is Zach calling from Colorado Springs. One of the things that I think is contributing to the loneliness epidemic is how much energy we all are putting into the political climate every day. And so I think one of the ways that civic leaders could address the loneliness epidemic is by trying to cool the temperature a little bit.
Well, thanks to everyone who called in, and you can subscribe to our podcast, The Middle, wherever you get your podcast, to hear that entire episode. So now to our question this hour. What do you think of ICE's tactics? Tolliver, how can people reach us?
Yeah, you can call us at 844-4MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. Or you can write us at listentothemiddle.com. You can also comment on our live stream on YouTube. I'll say it again, listentothemiddle.com. We already have emails coming in. Hit me with some more. I'll get you on air.
And I was telling somebody earlier what the topic of the show was. I want to make sure I pronounce this properly. I'm not asking you about ISIS tactics, like ISIS. It's ICE, I-C-E, apostrophe S tactics. We're talking about immigration. Joining us this hour, Doug Nicholls, Republican mayor of Yuma, Arizona, which is right on the Mexican border. Mayor Nicholls, great to have you back on The Middle.
Thanks for having me back. Such a great time the first time. I appreciate the second
we are grateful to have you. And Mary Sanchez, also back with us, Kansas City-based journalist and columnist with the Tribune Content Agency. Mary, great to have you back as well.
Great, thank you.
All right, so before we get to the phones, Mayor Nicholls, as a Republican who was supportive of tougher immigration policy, what do you think of the tactics being used by ICE that we just talked about under President Trump?
Well, I think it's an interesting discussion point, because here in Yuma, where you would expect those tactics to be in full use, they're not. We don't see any of these massive ICE raids. We don't have any of those setups with the courts or anything like that. So I'm having a hard time putting my arms around some of it. I think some of it's probably a little bit overblown by coverage. I think some of it is for shock and awe to like have the new sheriff in town making sure that people know what the approach is and the fact that we're pushing back on immigration. So I think it's a mix of tactics besides what's happening on the streets, but what's really the intention behind the two or three different approaches to reporting on it and what their effects really are.
I mean, do you think that you're not seeing it there because you're in the same party as the president, although the governor of Arizona is a Democrat?
And our two senators are Democrats. No, I think it's more because I think those are the exceptions, not the rules, as far as how the immigration arrests are happening. I'm not saying they're not happening that way. I'm just saying that I think that's not the standing operating procedure for ICE. I think it's in the extremely large cities. You have extremely large protests. You have extremely large groups of individuals that all fall into the category that are subject to the arrest orders. So I think that's it. But I mean, every country, every community in the United States isn't experiencing the ICE arrests the same.
Mary, what are
Yeah.
you seeing in Kansas City? How is this playing out there?
We're seeing everything that you described, but not at the massive scale that you might in Los Angeles. What a lot of people within the civil rights community really believes that that's almost like a test place, largely by demographics, but that some of those same tactics, I mean, we have seen here. We have an immigration court, and up until probably about a month and a half ago, there were some cases where they, an immigrant would show up ready to have their case heard, totally legal. They were doing what they were asked to do, and the case was dismissed, and then they were immediately taken into custody. We're a regional area for the federal government, so we have ICE offices here, FBI, U.S. Marshals, all the letter agencies, but they've had court monitor watchers, people who are trained to just be there as a witness, and that seems to have stopped that within our court here in Kansas City. But we've had everything else too. We've had masked agents, a lot of different sightings of different people in different areas. We have had some smaller raids where like some restaurants were hit, owned by the same owner, and both of the locations were raided, for lack of a better term, and workers were taken out in the early morning.
Mayor Nicholls, as we listened to Mary Sanchez describe what's happening there, and we've heard, anecdotal accounts from all around the country, it's quite clear that the crackdown is going far beyond people who are violent criminals and gang members. A lot of other people who may have been in this country for years are being snatched up. How do you feel about that, given that the president did run on a promise of getting rid of the violent criminals and the gang members, at least first?
All right, so my discussions with our Border Patrol agents that are actually Yuma agents that have been spread across the country to help ERO efforts in that is, if they're going after one criminal migrant that needs to be deported or go through a process, and they run into two or three that are also out of immigration status, and they get picked up, that's what they're focused on. They do not have standing orders to go after anybody. The people that they're looking to go after are the ones that are criminal. Now, however, if there's a criminal member in a family and a non-criminal member in a family, but they're in the same location during an interdiction or a raid, or however you want to refer to them, then they get picked up because they're also not of that. They're also in violation of the law, even though they don't have a criminal background.
Mary, how did the people that you speak with, just the ordinary people in Kansas City, feel about the fact that that it's far beyond just criminals being targeted?
I think it depends on how aware they are, and frankly, how much they understand about immigration law, which is incredibly complicated. It's supposed to be the second most complicated form of our government, second only to the tax code. So I understand why people don't know about it. That's why I've been doing a lot of explanatory writing on, different cases. I think as people hear more and more, they're a little bit mortified, partly because they don't understand. They're like, how is it that someone could go to work in the morning and literally see their place being raided? We had one restaurant here where they left food cooking on the stove when they hauled people out of there, and just put it was on a legal pad, closed, taped to the door. And there was one worker who was showing up for work and saw that and didn't know what had happened. She hadn't heard yet. I think there's just a lot of fear and lack of understanding. It kind of depends on who you are, though. I mean, one of the things I'm really worried about, a lot of false narratives about Latinos. I mean, 8 out of 10 of us are U.S. citizens, first of all. Some U.S. citizens have been picked up, though, in some of those kind of let's just scoop a wide net. So
Yeah.
it causes people to fear and question, and I think somewhat get a grasp of that they don't fully understand what's going on.
Do you see that fear at all among your constituents in Yuma, Doug Nicholls?
We're 60 to 70% Hispanic in our community, and we don't really have that. Actually, during the previous 4 years in the previous administration, when the swarms of people were coming through our community, there was more of an outrage about that than this. We have, I guess you want to call them raids, but they're I-9 checks. We're making sure that people that are employed and the employer's done the right check to make sure that they can work. And those are resulting in like 1 or 2 people at a time. So that doesn't really resonate a whole lot of fear throughout our communities. So I'm not getting that from the community as a whole. There are some people, and we do have some minor protests that express those fears.
Okay. Tolliver, one of the faces of the Trump administration's crackdown has been Tom Homan, who was actually appointed to a senior position at ICE by President Obama in 2013 and has served as President Trump's border czar in the second term.
Yeah, and he's defended the deportation policies. Here he is in an interview with CBS's Lilia Luciano.
I think we're doing the right thing. This country's safer because of what we're doing. We're keeping our promise to American people.
Would you say that the strategy of arresting the worst of the worst has shifted?
No. When we go out and do these operations, there's several going on right now across the country. We're targeting public safety threats and national security threats. Now, I'll caveat that. No one's off the table. Priorities. If you're in the country illegally, you're on the table.
By the way, ICE has a goal of arresting 3,000 people per day, but as of July, that number was closer to 1,000. Tolliver, what are we listening to here?
This is Juan Luis Guerra with Visa para un Sueño, or Visa for a Dream. It's about how hard it is to get a visa in the U.S. This song came out in 1989. I can proudly say that 36 years later, the process has only gotten worse. We're taking your calls coming up on The Middle.
This is The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. If you're just tuning in, The Middle is a national call-in show. We're focused on elevating voices from the middle, geographically, politically, and philosophically. Or maybe you just want to meet in the middle. This hour, we're asking what you think about the tactics of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, also known as ICE, under President Trump. Tolliver, the number again, please.
It's 8444-MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. You can also write to us at listentothemiddle.com or on social media. I'm checking.
And I'm joined by Yuma, Arizona Mayor Doug Nicholls and Mary Sanchez, a columnist for the Tribune Content Agency. And the phone lines are lighting up. So let's go to Janine, who is in Minneapolis. Janine, go ahead with your thoughts about the immigration tactics of the Trump administration.
Hi. Yes, thank you for having me on. And my thought is that I'm an independent voter, not really a Democrat, not really a Republican. Voted for both parties in my lifetime. But what I'm seeing right now makes me not even recognize America. I just think it's horrifying. It's like we have lost our humanity. We're just turning into this cruel country. And the thing that really bothers me is, when Trump was running, it was about getting the illegal people out. Okay, nobody's against making sure that people come to the country legally, but it's been lost. Now it's rounding up people. Now we have minimum numbers of people that need to get rounded up. They are sent to horrible places like Alligator Alcatraz. They're sent to countries that they have no reason to be sent to terrible facilities in those countries. Mm-hmm. And it's just horrifying to me. I don't recognize America. It makes me very sad. And I don't know what has happened to us. I don't know where our humanity and our empathy has gone.
Well, and Janine, let me just ask, are you seeing this personally? Have you seen any of this directly, or are you seeing it in the news?
I have seen it directly. I've seen it where they've come through Minneapolis and they've gone into areas. I will say the folks in those areas fought back and really put a stop to some of that. I give those people a lot of credit. The other thing, to be honest, the other way that I just sort of anecdotally see it is that when I go anywhere, if you go to a restaurant, if you're in a hotel, we always saw lots of Latin people, right? Lots of Mexican people working. They're not there anymore. I don't know where they are, but I never see them anymore. They're not around. I don't see them on the streets. I don't see them in the grocery stores. They've sort of disappeared.
Janine, thank you so much for that call. Mary Sanchez, how does that square with what you're hearing about where you are and just the level of fear, I guess, among Latinos, whether they're in the country legally or not?
It squares with it. I mean, you will hear those voices. I went to a grand opening of a new El Mercado fresco, and there were hundreds of people, almost all Latino, that were there. But everyone said, well, we feel like this is a safe place. Then I also know of people who, this one woman I can think of, she owns a salon. She's legal. A lot of her clients are undocumented or they're mixed status families. Some of their family members might be. She will close the door and lock it behind people just for their comfort
Just
and
in
their
case ICE is
safety.
coming in.
Sure. And a lot of this is based on just a fear. The administration has said that they want people to self-deport. So part of the tactic is fear, intimidation. We're going to come for you. You don't know where you're going to be picked up. We had some people here recently who were fishing, and we're not quite sure who it was that came upon them first, but asked about a fishing license, which they didn't have. They're in deportation proceedings right now, or it's technically called removal proceedings. And we don't know if it was a ranger, if it was a county sheriff.
Right.
Other people have been driving. You roll through a stop sign, and that's how you're apprehended. Those are not the violent criminals. By the government's own data, some of the most recent that's been crunched, it's about 7% of the people who have been arrested for removal, only about 7% actually had a violent conviction, which I think most people would be okay with if it's truly a violent and they've served their time, they've, for the victims so that they feel like they had justice. I think most people would be okay with that type of removal.
Right.
But this
Mayor
is
Nicholls,
something different.
I mean, you talked about the fear. You talked about the idea that this is about sort of like you get something on TV and you're sort of scaring people, maybe into self-deporting. Are you seeing people decide that they're ready to just go back to their country of origin because they're afraid, where you are in Yuma?
Well, actually, you could just see that by the numbers trying to cross the border. We were at 1,500 people a day at peak, people trying to cross the border. Now we're at 4.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the message is
right.
clear, right? And so it gives a sense of security to the border. Now, I know my last name is not Hispanic, but my wife's previous last name, or her maiden name is. It's not like I'm removed from any of the culture that is existence in my community, and people again were more concerned about the 1,500 coming through with the very, very, very limited vetting and just being released than they are at least in my community and what I've been experiencing, at least from that perspective. Then people be getting picked up if they're not supposed to be here, whatever their status is. Then that seems to be the counter motion to where we were for the last 4 years. So there is a sense of security for a lot of people in my region. So I guess it's very regional.
Let's go to Darvin, who's in another region, Columbia, South Carolina. Darvin, what do you think about what's happening? Hello, Darvin.
We'll get him back.
Well, I mean, okay, Darvin, never mind.
Right in, Darvin.
Yeah,
I'll
right in,
get you.
Darvin. We'll go to Lisa in Kansas City, where Mary is. Lisa, welcome to the middle. Go ahead.
Hi. I missed a little bit of the show, but I caught back up. I was just talking to one of the producers about the lack of humanity in the approach. Invoking fear, of course, is just... I mean, I almost can't talk about it without crying. I'm a lifetime restaurateur. I'm 60 years old, and I started early, in my teens. our industry, of course, has employed many undocumented workers. They've also taken me into their homes, and I've known their families, and I'm stunned. I'm stunned at the lack of humanity. The fact that this administration puts every other thing first, every single other thing first, is just so disheartening. You know,
Have you
and
seen
I know
any,
I'm not
Lisa, have you
alone
seen
in
any,
saying that I don't want to stay.
have you seen
Go
any
ahead, I'm
raids
sorry.
yourself in your restaurants? Have you had to deal with that directly?
I have not, and here's why. I'm an independent contractor. I don't employ people. I do work in places where people are employed, and I don't know who is or who isn't. But I look around and I know that, you know, there are mixed households of people. Some are and some are not documented, and they're all living in fear. That's my issue, like invoking fear when we already struggle with that as human beings to begin with.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah. Lisa, thank you very much for calling in. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to go to Tamron, who's in Brigham City, Utah. Tamron, go ahead with your thoughts. Tamron, are you there?
Tamron. They all want to talk to me. That's what this is.
Maybe that's what's going on. I hear Tamron on the other end of the line, but
Hello?
yeah. Hi, Tamron. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. You're on the air.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear you. Hi. Sorry, I apologize. The neighbor just caught me.
That's okay.
Yeah, no, I'm here.
Go ahead.
So, I was talking to the call screener producer. I'm not sure exactly the role, but I just live here, and I mean it's a growing area here in Utah, and we're seeing a lot of new folks coming in, and I write for the local paper here, and one of the stories I was recently assigned was to cover a family who had taken over one of the fruit stands here. And the family talked a little bit about being an immigrant family, coming from Mexico 40 years ago and becoming part of this community over that, 40 years time. And it was just something where I had started talking with some folks around me at the paper and in my family, and just things that I had started to see online and in person. I had very recently seen some ICE officers at a grocery store arresting a man. I have no additional knowledge on that, but it started to, just oddly concern me, and maybe I shouldn't be talking about immigrants anymore. That there's just angry rhetoric that's just come over things, and I just got real concerned about it, and including it as part of the story. And yet, at the same time, it is still a part of their story. It's part of America's story, right? We're all immigrants from other places,
Just worried that even just by reporting on it, that it could hurt, I guess, immigrants who are in the country. Tamron, thank you very much for that call. Doug Nicholls, I mean, we're hearing a theme here from different people in different places that they're upset about sort of the fear that's being instilled in places around the country.
Sure, and I think what the last caller kind of hinted at was the rhetoric of fear and hate, and I think that is something that needs to get removed from the discussion. I think it's used on both sides of the topic to generate sympathy, to generate narrative. At the end of the day, what we're talking about are people who broke the law. Generally, arrests are not. I don't care what you're being arrested for. It's not the best day of your life, right? I mean, they're aggressive. You're being taken a place you don't want to go. I mean, I don't think that's unusual whether you're being arrested for, as an American citizen, for something you did to break a law here, or someone that's come from another country. I don't think that process is ever going to look Disney-esque. But at the end of the day, there were millions of people let into this country, and I think that's what we're trying to do is trying to get things rebalanced out. And
Do you
the
think that
hate
the
does
only
not
way to
help.
do that, though, is to have people be afraid, to have agents wearing masks, to have people be sent to really bad prisons, not just regular prisons, but like surrounded by alligators, or in El Salvador, where you don't know what's going to happen? Is the only way for the Trump administration to accomplish its goal of dealing with illegal immigration to have these kinds of tactics and scare people?
So, I'm not inside operations. I don't know what their other chances are of doing different methods, but I do know for the last 4 years, they had 2 tents set up here in Yuma for 800 people apiece to weather through the summer, through the whole process of coming into the country. And that's if they didn't die in the desert. We had 50 people a year die in the desert trying to get through here. Numerous stories of rape and just horrific things that people are telling coming across the border. So, I mean, what we're talking about is a bad situation from beginning to end. And I think what we can really be focused on is not perpetuating the hate on either side. I mean, doxing federal law enforcement agents, requiring them to have to mask up so they don't get doxed, is a problem too. I mean, that's not something that we should be doing as Americans either. So I don't have the answer. I don't know that there's, a softer, nicer way to get this done. However, there was definitely part of the election process was the Americans wanted to see a different motion, a different process than what was being done in the previous 4.
Tolliver, what is coming in online?
Yeah, David in Minneapolis says Trump's immigration policy has little to do with immigration and everything to do with attacking and intimidating blue states and areas, period. And then Greg in Boise says masked, unidentified, armed men kidnapping people off the street is illegal. It's meant to distract us from the fact that Trump's policies are a disaster for the economy. It's also meant to cause unrest so Trump can declare martial law, cancel the elections in 2026, and keep himself in power. And Mary, I kind of wanted to ask you about that. Do you think that this is part of a larger strategy from the Trump administration?
Read Project 2025. I mean, yes, there are some larger strategies. I don't know that he's always orchestrating all of it, but there is this essence and move towards more authoritarian, more taking over and taking people's basic civil rights. I mean, it's really a civil violation in immigration status. It's not a criminal illegal act. Even our immigration courts, they're not criminal, they're not civil, they're administrative. I mean, most people don't even understand that. So that's part of the whole verbiage. There is, to the mayor's point, I mean, one of the big things that people are looking at, and it's in fear of that extremes, is civil rights leaders across the country and in Kansas City as well are already talking about just the need to train and grind into nonviolent protest, because after October, you're going to have more armed guards. They're sending in more of our National Guard troops everywhere. They're not trained in de-escalation. All it takes, and we've already had some issues here, I've written on this, where frankly, people screaming about fascists and Nazis and all this and that can really screw up something that's occurring, or it is so easy to escalate things. And if you're supposed to be a silent witness who is documenting, you cannot be doing that. Number one, that tape cannot be used in some of these federal court cases that are challenging the tactics. So there's a lot going on all at once there. There is this huge need to train people so that they can take that passion and, implement it in a way that actually can help us bring us back to where we want to be as a country. And like the mayor was saying, to do it the right way, and that you can change the laws. You can manage this. You don't have to be grabbing people off the streets. There are ways to do immigration that would not involve fear, hatred, stereotyping, all of that.
I want to get the mayor's thoughts on that right after this break. But Tolliver, if you look at the poll numbers, Republicans are still in favor of the tactics being used by ICE. Democrats and independents believe they've gone too far.
Yeah, but the king of podcasting, Joe Rogan, after you, of course, Jeremy, who supported Trump's reelection, had some choice words for ICE operations in an episode of his show back in June.
ICE raids are nuts, man. I don't think if the Trump administration, if they're running and they said, we're going to go to Home Depot and we're going to arrest all the people at Home Depot, we're going to go to construction sites and we're going to just like tackle people at constructions. I don't think anybody would have signed up for that. They said, we're going to get rid of the criminals and the gang members first, right? And now we're seeing like Home Depots get raided. Like that's crazy.
I think Joe Rogan makes about 250 million times more than I do right now.
How come we can't cuss on this show, man?
Right, I know, we can't because it was broadcast radio. That's the difference. Tolliver, what are we listening to?
This is Wyclef Jean with a song called Haitian Experience. Okay, so Wyclef was in the Fugees with Lauryn Hill, who was in Sister Act 2. Wyclef got his green card here. So basically, if he never got his green card, we'd never have Sister Act 2. Okay? That's not a world I want to live in. I don't think anybody wants to live in that world. More of your calls coming up on The Middle.
This is The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. This hour, we're asking how you feel about the tactics of ICE under President Trump. You can call us at 844-4MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. You can also reach out at listentothemiddle.com. I'm joined by Kansas City-based columnist Mary Sanchez with Tribune Content Agency and Yuma, Arizona Mayor Doug Nicholls, a Republican. And joining us now on the phone from Chapel Hill, North Carolina is Tom. Tom, go ahead with your thoughts about ICE's tactics.
Hey, a lot of what people have said already I agree with. The mask is unreasonable, approaching authoritarianism. But the one thing that nobody has talked about so far is the fact that a lot of people in this country without papers are here to claim asylum, political asylum. And one thing they should be doing is fixing the court system. You know, they're understaffed, they're overworked, there's not enough judges to process these cases. That needs to be fixed. And if you approach immigration from the way our laws have been set up, I think that's going to solve a lot of the problems. I think that the Trump administration's approach is one of fear, as other people said, and also playing to his base. You know, he promised to deport, I don't remember how many millions it was of people, but I don't think people understand what impact that would really have on the economy if they did deport 15 million people or whatever it was. I could go on and on. I don't want to overstay my time on your
You brought up
show.
some good points. So let me take those to our guests. Mayor Nicholls, a lot in there. First of all, are you worried about the economic impact of deporting as many people as the Trump administration is going to deport?
Well, so locally, no. As I mentioned, when they do an I-9 engagement, however you want to refer to that opportunity, where they're only walking away with one or two people at a time. The ag community here, we produce 90% of the leafy greens that United States and Canada consumes every winter. So if you're eating a salad during the summer, it's come from Yuma. But the farmers who hire all the labor do not want labor that is not documented. They want only documented labor. So we're not going to see that impact here in our community. Are we going to see it in New York or in LA? I can't speak to that. But here locally, those are things that we've looked into. I've talked to our major employers. They're not anticipating any lack of workforce that's going to affect how we produce our economy here in Yuma.
Let's go to Nova, who is in New London, Connecticut. Nova, go ahead with your thoughts.
Hi there. I'm younger compared to most of the people responding to this. I'm only 20. And honestly, I am scared. You wouldn't think in backwater Connecticut there would be a fear for this, but there is. The most I'd heard about immigration before it became such a large political standpoint was a raid that happened 8 years prior. And people talked about it as if it was a marvel or something that definitely didn't happen often. And the way I interpreted it as well was like not something to be scared of, but I am scared, and I feel deceived by the Trump administration. If anything, what they're promising is not what they're doing, especially hearing all the news stories about citizens being deported as well, children, babies, not just criminals.
Have you seen with your own eyes any of the things we're talking about, or is it mostly what you're seeing and reading in the news?
Mostly what I'm seeing and reading in the news, but also local news. I have heard of ICE raids and people getting pulled over for flags, even bumper stickers on flags as bumper stickers. I've seen stories of local people, Hartford, New London, people fighting back. There's a huge movement here for know your rights pamphlets and don't open the doors.
Nova, thank you for calling, and also love to have a 20-year-old. We have one in every show, at least. I appreciate your call. By the way, next week we're going to be talking about the challenges of Generation Z, so tune in for that one as well. But thank you for that, Mary Sanchez. We're hearing from people around the country who are really feeling that fear. I don't want to just ask the same question over and over again, but this seems like this is the theme. Do you think that this is going to play out among voters as we get into the midterm elections next year?
If redistricting early doesn't change some of that in some areas, that's a whole other show you can do. I do think it will, and partly because people, they sense that. They know that there's something intrinsically unfair about a lot of these tactics. Even if they don't understand or somehow have dismissed that even someone with an undocumented status has legal rights. You have legal rights in this country. They just know that it's wrong. The other thing is, I think she did mention, or several people have, the idea of mixed status families. And I think people that's one part of immigration that they grasp. That, one of the things is, I'm thinking of statistics, like more than 8% of all children in the U.S. live in a household with at least one undocumented member. Now, they're starting to work on some of these studies now about what would be the impact if you removed X percentage of the undocumented population, which right now we think is about 14 million people, which is high. It's a higher percentage per capita than it's been in decades. So, people are reacting to something that's very real, and I think you need to honor that. That's a truth, but it's what you do and how you manage it. And I think what people are understanding is that these literally are your neighbors. And it's a mixed status family. It may be a child who's a U.S. citizen, but it might be their parent. Mm-hmm. Do you want that parent removed from the home? And what does that do to the child? What does that do to a school system? What are we disrupting here long term in terms of our economy, mental health, communities? It's a really wide net that's being cast in terms of what the impacts can be, and they're not positive.
Mayor Nicholls, let me ask you, you mentioned that illegal immigration has dropped down significantly. What did you say, 4 people as opposed to 1,500 a year ago? It's down overall more than 90% in July compared with last year. Is there a point you see at which the emergency that Trump declared that led to all this aggressive immigration enforcement comes to an end?
Definitely. I think there would be a natural opportunity to make that happen. I don't know what that number is. I know the 14 million that Mary referred to, there was a large percentage of that are recent within the last 4 or 5 years. And so I think that's probably the target area, is to try to reset that, because when those people showed up in our communities, that disrupted our schools, that disrupted a lot of things too. So there's disruption in the whole process. But I'd like to just kind of tag on to what Mary talked about, and that is elections. In Arizona, we redistricted right after the census. We do it a lot earlier than most, and so that landscape's not going to change for us. But if the effort and the energies put forward by the community members need to be focused towards that, because everything that has happened since the the 80s and 90s in immigration falls under the law, the same immigration law. It's the policy that changes from administration to administration. So when Obama declared, we're going to make sure that the Dreamers have an opportunity to get things right, well, that was quite a while ago, right? How many of them have? So if they end up in a situation now, well, it's not like it was just yesterday that was mentioned that, okay, we've got a situation, let's put a pause button on deportations, but it wasn't a forever pause. It was something to get fixed. So, I think there is a lot of complexity when you start talking immigration, and to just say there's a specific number, I don't know that you could, but definitely this would definitely have to come to an end at some point.
Yeah. Jennifer is calling from Pomona Park, Florida. Hi, Jennifer. Welcome to The Middle. Go ahead.
Hi, yeah, I'm really, really upset and experiencing something quite different from your gentleman from Arizona. My community is 65% Hispanic, and I just looked up the date of it on May 10th, or thereabouts. ICE came through and in cooperation with the state troopers and our local law enforcement, and terrorized our schools. We have two schools. We have an elementary and a high school, junior, senior high school, and they were harassing parents in the drop-off line. They were buzzing both schools with helicopters and basically just terrorizing and harassing my neighbors and my friends in this community. They, for all of the money spent and the upset it caused in our community, they found 2 undocumented people. And it just is outrageous, it's expensive, and it's unnecessary. We have some real problems in this country, and we could be using that effort and money to address our genuine problems and not harassing these people that are just working and raising their families.
Jennifer, thank you very much for that call. Mary Sanchez, that is an interesting point about the different problems. There's clearly a disagreement in this country about how much of a problem illegal immigration is. I think you've muted yourself.
Oh, can you still hear me?
Yeah, no, now you're back. Okay.
Okay, great. Don't know what happened there, but I'm back. Your caller was pointing out something, I think it used to be called the Morton Memo. And you talk about changing policy. It used to be that churches, schools, and hospitals were off limits. Those weren't places that ICE and previously INS ever went to. They were just considered almost sacred spaces. It's not a place that you disrupt for this type of, take apprehension, for lack of a better word. That was part of the policy change under the administration was, oh, no, anywhere is fair game. Well, you put the fear into a school system. We have school districts here. That's a Supreme Court law. It's Plyler versus Doe from 1982 that no matter what a child's immigration status is, they are allowed to have a K through 12 education. Now, the Dreamers, that was for someone who was older, and we never passed that legislation to give them the rights of a legal status. We never fixed it for them. It was just this temporary. Same thing for DACA. But those sorts of changes are what's causing people a lot of apprehension and fear and the pushback that I think you might see at elections, especially when you start messing with people's kids. That's when people start to fight back.
Let me go to another caller. David is in Denver, Colorado. David, what are your thoughts about ICE's tactics?
Well, I just wanted to say, Jeremy, and thanks for taking my call. I am a veteran, a former military police officer. I've worked with federal law enforcement. This isn't the way we do business. I also have a wife who's a 30-year immigrant who's in status, probably 7 years left on her green card status. We know 2 people, one from Great Britain and one from Australia, who were picked up and put in detention, not directly sent back to their country of origin. It seems punitive. I'm also curious about what happens as a former law enforcement officer. What happens when they show up at an American citizen's house, which they've done before by mistake, try to take them into custody. They're wearing a mask. They don't identify themselves, and it's a stand my ground state, and one of these officers gets shot, God forbid. What happens then? We have a real problem. And I think that your former guest, who identified himself as a Republican, who said that, that it's always a bad day when you get arrested, that this is not Disney-esque, is not being completely truthful. We know that Stephen Miller, the assistant chief of staff, has set a 3,000 person a day quota. You can't do that by getting the worst of the worst. Stephen Miller's made it clear he wants every immigrant and what he calls homegrowns gone as well. And as a freelance writer as well, I've watched hours of video of them swooping in on daycare centers and elementary schools and traumatizing children. This is not the way we do business as law enforcement in this country. What's going on? Let's be
thank
honest.
you for that call. Yes, and thank you for your service as well, David. And I'm going to let the mayor respond to what you said there.
Well, I mean, even back to the previous caller with the schools, we have a county of 220,000 people, so we have quite a few schools. That's never happened here. So I don't know what the difference is between here and anywhere else in the country, but we're not seeing that. We're not seeing daycares being raided or stalked out, or none of that is happening here. But again, it's one of those things that we do need to make sure is done right. It's my understanding, and I've not witnessed any of these grades where people are masked, but they're still badged as what agency they're with. So there should still be ability for however you want to say it, reparations, to make sure those things get fixed.
So you're okay with the masks as long as they have a badge and they can identify themselves officially?
Correct. I think that's understandable given the fact that people's IDs have been then put online with their home addresses, and their families have been threatened, and their kids have been threatened, and they've been stalked. That's not what we want for our law enforcement officers either. I mean, they are Americans. They're doing a job the same. They're following directions like they did in the previous administration, where they just passed people through the border without worrying about what their backgrounds are. So, I mean, they're doing their job. So let's not make their lives at danger. Let's show up at the polls, change things the way people want them to be changed. That's where the energy, I think, is best placed, regardless of what your political position is.
Mm-hmm. Let me just ask you one other question, Mayor, which is, we've heard people upset about the masked agents. Somebody brought up the National Guard in cities. We've seen also investigations into political foes by the Trump administration. And to some of our listeners and to some people in this country, it's starting to look like authoritarianism. We've heard that before. As a Republican, do you think it does? Or when you hear people say that, you go, oh, come on, relax?
Well, I think, for instance, the investigations into political foes, that's not this administration's first. I mean, other administrations have done the same thing, including the last one. So I think we need to kind of take that paranoia out of the way. But as far as the other elements, I think we need to always step back and take a look at it. I'm just trying to remember your example or what your specific
National
part
Guard
of the
in the
question
cities and masked agents and stuff like that.
Right. So National Guard generally is crowd control. They're not the ones generally kicking the door down. Usually that's the federal agents, those that are trained in actual hands-on opportunity, because they have to, they're there for crowd control. They don't have the ability to engage as far as armed
So you're not worried about authoritarianism, is what you're saying?
You always have to keep it in check, and that's what elections are for. Okay. And if any administration tries to get rid of an election cycle, I think you're going to see an upheaval in this country like never before.
That is the Republican mayor of Yuma, Arizona, Doug Nicholls. We've also been speaking with Mary Sanchez, a columnist with Tribune Content Agency. Thanks so much to both of you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. There's extra episodes of our One Thing Trump Did podcast every week on the Middle podcast feed. Next week, we'll be right back here talking about the issues that Generation Z faces, the challenges. So if you are one of our many Gen Z listeners, please call.
As a member of Gen Z, I'm very excited. Our number is 8444-MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. or you can reach out at listentothemiddle.com, where you can also sign up for our free weekly newsletter.
The Middle is brought to you by Long Neck Media, distributed by Illinois Public Media in Urbana, Illinois, and produced by Harrison Patino, Danny Alexander, Samber Mastaz, John Barth, Annika Dessler, Brandon Condricks, and Steve Mork. I'm Jeremy Hobson, and I will talk to you next week.